This course, The Fall and Rise of Jerusalem, is based on my book with the same name. The book was based on my PhD thesis presented to the Senate of Tel Aviv University in January 1997 under the supervision of my teacher Nadav Ne'eman. I can tell you that I submitted this thesis only because it was the time to do it. Most of my teachers were quite satisfied with it, but I was not. Even if the general picture was clear to me, I saw the many problems and holes in the picture of Judah in the 6th century BCE and thought that many of them can and should be filled. This is the reason why I was waiting with the Hebrew version of my book until 2001, trying meanwhile to base more the archaeological and geopolitical aspect as well as the biblical discussion. I submitted the Hebrew version of the manuscript of my book to the publisher, Yad Yitzchak Ben-Zvi in Jerusalem in 2001 only because it was the right time to do it. And even if the book was accepted for publication and actually was published in April 2003, I was not satisfied from the results. I still saw the many problems and holes in this picture of Judah in the 6th century BCE and thought that many of them can and should be filled. This is why I was waiting with the English edition of my book until 2004, trying meanwhile to base more the biblical part of the book as well as the historical sections and the demographic evaluations. The overall picture was presented in the book, but even though I choose to end the book with a series of questions and subjects that are still open. Some of them should be the subject of further research, and some of them should be probably wait for future developments and future finds. This course presents another stage in my research of Judah and the Judeans in the 6th century BCE. In the last 10 years, I excavated at Ramat Rachel in order to gain more information of the archaeology and the history of Judah in the 6th century BCE. Together with my colleague, Professor David Van der Hooft of Boston College, we studied the Yehud stamp impressions and published a heavy book on this subject. With my students and colleagues, I read a lot, wrote a lot, discussed the subject in different occasions, and especially taught many courses and seminars on these subjects, both in Tel Aviv University, my university, and at Heidelberg University in Germany. I felt that I'm ready to go one further step in my long-time connection with the 6th century BCE and prepare this course. When I started to prepare my research for teaching in this course, with the main goal of presenting an overview synthesis on the history of Judah under Babylonian rule, I knew that I have two options: to focus on the half-empty cup or to focus on the half-full cup. Focusing on the half-empty cup means to show the gaps in our knowledge, the cautious we should treat the different archaeological and historical details, and avoiding the overall synthesis because of all this. Focusing on the half-full cup means to know all this and to treat separately each one of the different fields of research, the biblical, archaeological, and historical material, and to try to exhaustively study each one of them without letting the other field to affect the research of the other one, but with a clear purpose: to get to a point when a positive summary can be done and then a synthesis. I bear in mind that it can be that I misunderstood some details, that I misinterpreted others, that it can be that future discoveries will change our knowledge and perspective of some of the parts in this big puzzle, and maybe even the way we should see the entire picture. However, I feel that we have enough information and we are in the right time to try to go one step forward and present this synthesis. I'm sure that if and when I will teach this material in 2, 5, or 10 years from now, with better understanding of the material, with more knowledge, and even maybe with new finds, the historical and archaeological reconstruction might be different. However, This is the best I can do in this phase of my understanding of this fascinating period in the history of Judah and the Judeans. I would like to thank my student Ido Koch for the enormous work he invested in front of and behind the curtain. I would also like to thank Nadav Stark for the forcing power of this project in Tel Aviv University. Pavlo Arkushing and Omri Roth made an amazing work in filming and editing inside and even outside the studio. I would like also to thank to my colleagues that took part in this course and agreed to lecture each one on his special subject. Dr. Yuval Gadot, Professor Konrad Schmid, Dr. Cynthia Edenburg, Professor Yoram Cohen, and Professor David van der Hooft. Last but not least, I would like to thank to each one of you, the students in this course, for going with me such a long way, crossing together hard times of Assyrian-Babylonian conquest, surviving destructions and deportations, developing hopes for return, and finding ourselves at the end in this tiny province with many hopes and expectations, learning about the glorious past and looking for a brighter future.